And welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Burr, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. Roger, certainly a wonderful time of year. The NCAAs, they never seem to disappoint. U.S. Women's Open, wild run down the stretch with the U.S. Men's Open on the horizon. A few amateur junior golfers working their way into the mix. So this is just really probably for golf the most exciting time of year, that end of May into June. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the World Series of golf all of a sudden, right? I mean, you get every place you turn, you got something coming on relative to golf, golf, professional golf, open. So really exciting opportunities and times right now for players to get out there and play some great golf.
Stanford women winning another national championship. The Auburn men hoisting the trophy in collegiate golf. What were your takeaways?
Well, I mean, you can see the Stanford thing brewing, right? I mean, they've had such a strong season. They've got such a good team. The depth is unbelievable. And it's kind of home state, home place, So you can see that happening. Auburn winning it for the first time. What an exciting, finish to that, to see them win and hoist. And actually would had a first time winner regardless, right? I mean, those two were in the final. So it was really exciting to see.
And if you go back and listen to the Hub of Junior Golf podcast, you will see Auburn, Brandon Valdez, actually a key component, an All-American for Auburn, but he has been a guest on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. Roger talked a lot about recruiting. Obviously, he was recruited by everyone, but if you haven't seen the past episodes, you could see something like that. It would be great for parents and kids to listen to Brendan, listen to his podcast on the Hub of Junior Golf and everything he went through. And he had some great advice, Roger, about getting recruited and making sure you pick the right school.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you want to go to the right school to play golf, not just sit on the bench and not get an opportunity to show your game. And, he was a good example too, Ryan. He won your national tour, NB3 national championship. What a great, tournament he had there. But I mean, I think he was talking about that a little bit. What a great experience for him to go play something that was different, right? In his mind, that was a springboard for his collegiate career.
Well, it was a playoff, and it's pretty interesting. And obviously, the Junior Golf Hub was a huge part of the success of the MB3 Junior Golf National Championship. Now, in fact, the title sponsor, the Junior Golf Hub, notably gave the third Junior Golf National Championship. But that playoff in the 14 to 18 year one, how about Valdez and Nick Dunlap?
Yeah, that's right.
On the, won the U.S. Junior, the USM, and then won as an amateur, and of course is now on the PGA Tour. So I think we did okay year one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you did just fine. That was a great representation of what the field and what that tournament's all about. And obviously, these kids, these young men, are outstanding players.
So we will piggyback off the exciting college golf national championships with the Stanford women and the Auburn men, and welcome in Andrea Kaelin, the head coach at Tulane. Decorated career. It started at Florida State. I know on the men's side you were probably rooting for the Seminoles, coach, but it was a great final.
It was super fun to watch. Really proud of the guys. I mean, they fought hard all the way to the end. I know there was some tears as they finished the round, but super proud of them. They've had an awesome program, lots of success over the years, and so I think it's only a matter of time for them to bring that trophy home.
Tell us a little bit about you. Played your college golf at Florida State and then got into coaching, obviously coached at some great programs that laid the foundation for what you're doing at Tulane now. Give us a little background of how this all happened.
Yeah, so golf has always been a family sport of mine. It was I was introduced to it at an early age by my grandfather. Spent summers out in Colorado. There's no better place to play some golf than Colorado during the summertime. And so, I didn't fall in love with it right away, but it was always a part of my life until I got into high school. Was really when I started to dedicate my time and focus to golf, and I excelled rather quickly, and that was really exciting for me. But with my late start, I wasn't heavily recruited, so I actually started my golf career, at a junior college. And Garrett Chadwell, now at Texas A&M, was my coach there, and that really started it all for me. He's so talented at what he does. Every program he's touched has had amazing success, and at the junior college was no different. We were back-to-back national champions when I was there, and then that opened doors to programs like Florida State. And Florida State was always attractive to me because I'm a Florida girl, and I always grew up rooting for the Seminoles, and so to have that opportunity was awesome. And when I got there, they were going through some coaching transitions, and so there was a little uncertainty. But Amy Bond came in my last year at Florida State, and just having coaches like Garrett, like Amy, really inspired me to want to give back that same experience one day. And I was an okay golfer. I was an average college golfer during my time, and so I knew a professional career was going to be a really challenging road. As much as I loved competing and playing the sport, I really felt like my value was with people, and inspiring people to be their best and working with people and building relationships. And so I thought, there's no better gig than to coach your sport and to have an impact on people. And so others really inspired me to want to do this.
Yeah, Coach, you just mentioned the JUCO or the junior college route. It is a question that we get quite often from parents and players of that experience. What is that experience like? Because they get really nervous about going to junior college. Now, you went to Redlands, I believe, at the national championships there. And, we advise a lot of our players who are late bloomers and want to go to college, but not really getting recruited, that JUCO route. And I think it would be really helpful to our audience to hear about a little bit of that experience that you had there, because we do get that question quite often.
Yeah, I think it's a great avenue to start, like you said, as a late bloomer, because the most important thing is you want playing time. If I didn't get to play every tournament and experience the ups and downs, experience the success, experiencing the challenging times on the golf course, I wouldn't have had that bigger, better opportunity in the future years. And so the most important thing is to find a program where you're going to get better, number one, and you're going to get playing time. It's hard because you have to kind of put aside an ego, I'll say, and not be so attracted to the bright, shiny lights of, your big D1 programs. But you have to look inside and understand, okay, what's important to me, and what do I want to get out of this experience? There's nothing better than competing and playing for championships. And so I'm a huge advocate for junior college. It can only make you better. And so go to a junior college and be the best junior college player. Go win some championships, go win some golf tournaments, go get that winning, that success experience. And so and they're doing the exact same thing that these D2 NAIA schools, D1 schools are doing. I mean, they're playing a full schedule. They're playing against some great teams. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity just to grow and allow yourself to have bigger, better opportunities in the future.
With that said, your recruiting philosophy, you went the JUCO route, so you're probably more open to the portal or to a JUCO than maybe some other coaches. Have you found yourself more of a portal coach to bring in new talent each year, or do you go the traditional junior golf way?
I'm pretty traditional. The portal, I have mixed feelings on the portal. I kind of call it a double-edged sword because players are kind of jumping ship and moving around way more often than in years past. And so, if you lose a player, you can easily replace that player from the portal. So, but I don't want to lose my players. I don't. I want them to stay here all 4 years. I want them to have a fantastic, phenomenal experience, at Tulane. And so I think it can be a resource for sure, but I usually stick to the traditional route of recruiting. I think it's important, as I said, kind of mentioned in the beginning, is I'm very relational. I like to build these relationships with these kids. As soon as we can get on the phone, I'm super excited for June 15th. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
To start building those relationships, and it's super important to build that relationship and find the players who are going to come in and fit the culture that we have here. I think when you go into the portal and you're constantly turning over players, it's hard to develop that strong culture of what you're building. And so I tend to stick to the traditional route. And junior college, I'm still very connected with the junior college coaches, and so I'm always in touch with them, trying to figure out what players they have, especially freshmen coming in. So that's definitely appealing to me, especially as I got started in August. For me, I had a small team. I inherited a small team, and so for the 24 class, I really had to think about, okay, do I want to bring in 4 or 5 freshmen? Or do I want to kind of spread out my roster and give us maybe some leadership? And so that's where the portal came into play. And that's where it really helped me was, when I transitioned here to Tulane.
Yeah, Coach, with that also being said, we see, I see that the roster, you have an eclectic group of young women who are playing on your team from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that as we've spoken to so many coaches, that their rosters are definitely more international, if you will, or at least almost half players international. Is that something also that because of where the talent is around the globe, or it's just a global game now, I would probably say it differently, is that more appealing to you to have international players? Is it more appealing to have domestic, American players? Is it just a matter of just the best players?
Yeah, bingo. Just a matter of the best players. I'm going to scout, all over the world. I'm going to find the best player I can. It doesn't matter where they're from. They could be from the state of Louisiana. They could be from Hawaii. They could be from Japan. I've traveled all over the world, trying to find the best players. And I just kind of fell into an international niche, I think, when I was at the junior college. Because, you get some of those NCAA non-qualifiers going that route, and they can really come in and help a junior college program.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really where I fell into the international side. And yes, it's a global game, and that makes it a little easier in that way. But and that's something I brought to TCU. They had a good recruiting class, but I came in and I said, look, I really think that, we could scout some studs from Europe, from overseas, and really elevate the program. And so, but it doesn't matter where they're from.
Yeah.
I want to find good kids who want to work hard, who love golf, who love Tulane, and who will come in and help us.
Yeah, Coach, I asked that question for actually another question, which is, as you know, the USGA has created the national program, and it started with the girls. It started with and hopefully to bolster more U.S. girls playing at the next level. And it is obviously a concern as you see young women who are playing the game who drop out of the game fairly early because they see that there's not opportunity. And maybe not equal opportunity, if you will, in so many respects. So I asked that question because I see and hear a lot from young girls who want to play at the next level. They're so strapped with academics, especially, obviously Americans who, type A parents going, you got to, go to the best school. It has to be the name on the box. It has to be this. And if you don't achieve that, then, why bother, right? Because you're not going to go to a school that's less than academically, or at least not a Power 5 school, right? And so, as we talk to parents all the time and players all the time, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and I think that they need to broaden their perspective a little bit. But at the same time, because the game is global, there are a lot more players worldwide that are just good players, and you're going to have to compete with that. And at some point, they have to make a decision, or just, I would say, decide on what their route is. They're going to go and be better, or they're going to go and just be good enough, and then be disappointed and say, well, there's not opportunity out there.
Right. And again, I think it's just a matter of, determining what your priorities are, in your college experience. Do you want to graduate and say, I went to Florida State, but I only played one tournament, or I went to Georgia and, had only one real opportunity to play. So, or did I, go to, maybe a smaller school and played every tournament, had tremendous success, got a great education, made lifelong friends, and, have a place to call home. So, it's determining what your priorities are. If you're okay, if all you want is a big name school and to be a part of, something awesome like that, then go do that. But understand what comes with it, right? So it's just aligning with your priorities and what's important to you.
With all that said, June 15th, right around the corner. So let's go inside the playbook. For those just finishing sophomores, when did you start compiling a list of the players that would be available to speak to on June 15th? We've had coaches talk about 5th, 6th grade. We've had coaches that say they wait to high school. So there's, we've seen a lot of different playbooks. I'm curious for you, Coach, when you start putting together your list in anticipation of June 15th.
I mean, I think the list really comes together, a few months before June 15th. I mean, as you're recruiting throughout the years, you're creating, your book of kids, right? And you've got, all the years listed, and, as we recruit throughout the years, we're going to a lot of the same tournaments year in and year out. And so it's just a matter of what kids are there, and do we really feel like, they're going to get better, number one, right? Because they're playing so young. There's 27s, 28s right now that are playing, and they're very good. And, okay, are they going to continue to get better, right? My light just went off. Sorry about that. And so it kind of just happens, right? It kind of just, the list builds as the years go on. But to answer your question, the list really comes together a few months before June 15th. That's when we decide, okay, we're talking to, this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid. So it evolves over time. And I think these kids are playing, at a very young age, and we see them, they come on our radar a lot earlier.
So is it as simple as getting a tee sheet? You go to we'll call it a national tournament. Yeah. You had someone in mind that, is a senior, junior, maybe graduating sophomore. Would you actually go watch a 7th and 8th grader that's in the open field, that's in the top 10, and eyeball that player that early?
I think so. I think it's worth it, because then you get a starting point, right? And then you get to see, okay, next year I get to see them again. All right, have they grown? What's different? So I think it's very important. Now, I'm not going to go chase them all year, but it gives me a good starting point. So, where were you a year ago? How have you developed since then? And it's unique because they grow, right? Their bodies change through the time, as they're evolving and maturing. And so it's good to see where they started and how far they've come. So yes, I think it's important. And there's a lot of tournaments too where you show up and you're like, oh, who's that? Or man, I just stumbled upon a gem. And so that happens too quite a bit. You go with the intent of watching maybe 5 or 6 kids, and then you stumble upon this hidden talent, and that's super exciting.
Well, Coach, what is your secret sauce? Is there 3 things that you look for in a player? Is there 1 thing? Is there 5? When you go recruiting or start looking at your philosophy, if you will, of recruiting players and to fit your team or to mold around your program, what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah. Of course, everyone's going to be attracted to, the most beautiful golf swing, or, the most powerful golf swing. But I really like to look at kids who are scrappy, who, they just find a way to get it in the hole. The golf swing is unique in that there are hundreds of different ways to really swing the club and, get it in the same position each time. So yes, I'm looking for great, fundamentals and a great foundation, but to go deeper than that, I want to see a kid who's not playing great, and I want to see how do they handle it? How are they, are they mentally tough? Are they going to give up after, a couple bad holes? Or are they going to stick it through and finish, birdie birdie? So I like to see those scrappy players, and I think I think that goes to back to like how I was, right? Like I like to, see a kid who just has this grit and just has this edge to him. And so that's what I think I find appealing about junior golf, is that, these kids, even though they start really early and they're very technical, I think that can hurt them in a way because they forget how to play, right? If you're always focused on changing something or developing something, or, that's an important piece. Of course, there are times when, yes, we've got to, really work on the technical side, but go out and play. Go out and play and really experience, how to score and get the ball in the hole. And I also like to see, what their character is like, right? Like that's super important to me. I want a kid who is going to treat their playing partners with respect, who's going to treat their, their parents with respect, because ultimately that's how they're going to treat me, right? So we're looking for a bunch of different things. It's not all how you hit the ball. If you hit it, far and straight, if you one putt all the time, it's good. Of course, we like that.
Yeah.
But it's not all about that. It's an all-encompassing thing.
Let me ask you, continuing for our families. Obviously, we're pretty proud. It's the most watched junior golf podcast that are starting to be around the world now. But a great question that we get is, Coach, do you like to be recruited by the player, by the family? And how early do you like to start to be recruited by an email or someone putting Tulane on their radar, hoping you'll end up doing the same?
I love it. I do. It shows initiative. It shows that they're. Who doesn't like to be who doesn't like it when someone's interested in you, right?
Right.
So I think it's wonderful. Right now we've got 27s who, we've got a year before we can chat with them. But there are kids who, email and keep us updated and send us results. And I think it's awesome. I love it. It tells me that, they care and that they're interested enough to keep the communication going. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So, Coach, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but how much detail do you want on a player? Like you talk about, technical stuff or skill things, or what you might be looking for, but what are you looking for? So you say grit. How do you measure that? How do you know they have it outside of, like, they may show up and play or finish a tournament after a bad round? What are some of the things that you try to find out about the player, and how do you do that?
Are you speaking about when I'm like evaluating or watching a
Yeah.
tournament, say? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Ben Hogan said it, he only hit maybe 5 perfect shots in his life. It's hard to be firing on all cylinders at any given time. I mean, that's when you're going to win a golf tournament, right? Is when you are firing on all cylinders. But majority of the time, you're going to be a little off. You're going to hit some shots, in the trees, or, you know, in a fairway bunker, so I want to see how they handle those situations. Can they get up and down when they're out of position? Can they, capitalize on birdie opportunities? Can they, still hit really good shots when it's really windy and raining and cold? Can they just push through those adverse conditions? And when they finish, are they crying? Are they, going straight to the range? Are they sitting down and evaluating their round? Are they figuring out what they're going to do, to do better the next day? Are they focusing on the positives, right? There's so much that a player can do after their round that can benefit them for their next round or for their next tournament. And I think a lot of kids can just, walk off the golf course and say, oh, it was just a bad day. But like, why? Why was it a bad day? So I think I think they're getting better at that. And so I love it when a kid, when they finish a tournament, will send me an email and say, this is what I learned. This is what I learned from this round. I did all of these things really, really well, but I have 2 weeks before my next event, and these are the things that I learned from the tournament that I can do better for my next tournament. So I love it when I get kind of that self-awareness from a kid who's they're just owning their game, right? And they have that plan to elevate their next round.
So how does the international aspect, I always want, I mean, the world's a big place, Coach. The world's a really big place. So is that identifying someone just through scores in other countries? Is it a resource that a relationship that you trust over the years that brings someone to your attention? I mean, it seems almost an impossible task to get a list when you're talking about recruiting the world of players that you want to even try to look at.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that. It's a lot of building those relationships, maybe with some of the coaches of the country's federations. It's nice because they travel with their team sometimes over to the States. So you really have the opportunity to build those relationships with those coaches. And so, yeah, it is about finding the coaches who you can trust and who will give you, honest information about where this player's level is at the moment, where they see, their development going. So that's a big piece to it. And I think, rankings are important, of course, so you kind of go on Wagger and you see all these kids who are, maybe ranked in the top 500, and you build a short list from there, and then you go overseas and you maybe watch a couple of those kids and you kind of build your list from there. So it starts really now. There's a few, we just wrapped up the German girls a couple weeks ago. So I know a lot of coaches were out there. That's always a really good starting point to kind of build your international pool of kids. And then maybe you go to 2 more international events and you're watching those same kids again. And so that's really a big opportunity to watch the international kids is during the summer months. So I think it's important to go over there, and I value watching players. So you can send me a golf swing, you can send me, some putting and the recruiting videos, and I think it's amazing. And I really appreciate the time that it takes for these recruits to put that together, because I know it takes time. But there's nothing more valuable than actually watching them play, and like I was speaking to earlier, just kind of their grit and character out on the golf course.
Coach, you touched a little bit on the rankings, and this is a hot topic with every parent and every kid out there, and a lot of coaches. And I think overall, we've heard basically the same thing from almost every coach that we've interviewed, which is it's almost like a starting point. It's not the end
Right.
all be all. It's starting point. However, I don't think that's necessarily the message that parents have gotten or think, right? Because they think rankings is everything. And one of the questions I like to ask our guests are, if you have two players and one player is playing events, let's say all over, maybe not as recognized as an AJGA event or an invitational, but they're playing, and that's what they can afford. It's where they are. They are just knocking it out of the ballpark. And maybe they're ranked, let's call it 1300, right? But they've learned to win. They've had multiple wins. Their scoring average is, let's call it 72. So a really solid player. And you have another player who plays in all the recognized events, if you will, never won, never finished above top 10, scoring average 72, right?
Mhm.
They seem to not, again, come to the top of the surface, but their ranking is 300, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
What player? What do you see in that? How would you kind of determine what's the best fit for you there?
Yeah. That's a tough one. I think there's value in the player who's ranked 1300, because they're going out and they're experiencing success. If you don't know how to win, it's going to be really challenging, to get those wins. So I love it when a player starts in, say smaller events for maybe a year, and they're winning 5 out of 10. They're experiencing that success, which is so crucial to your development. Okay, now you're winning, so now maybe we're going to elevate it a little bit, and we may start playing in some AJGA events. Okay, let's see how we fare in those. All right, you're getting some top 15s, top 25s. That's great. Maybe you win one now. So I think having that success and learning how to win is so crucial. So if I see a kid who's ranked 1300, yet they're still getting the job done, maybe on a 5900 yard course, and it's pretty straightforward. You still got to get the job done, right?
Mhm.
So I do think there's value to that, and of course resources and financials, and traveling. It's tough on parents, and so we understand that. We do. And so for me, you don't have to play in the biggest and best tournaments for me to go out and recruit you. I'm looking at your ranking, right? Right. You said it's a starting point. I'm looking
Yeah.
at your scoring average. I'm looking at the swinging you sent me. I'm looking at your results, but now I'm going to go watch you play. So again, that's the most important thing to me. And I think both players are great, of course. But I think there's tremendous value in that 1300, ranked player.
Yeah, and the reason I ask again, because we hear this so much from parents, and I see it so often with parents, as I have a junior golf academy in the Northeast, the Golf Performance Center, and Ryan sees it all over the world with the NB3 tournaments. We hear it from parents all the time. They play the ranking game. Their child starts to play poorly, and they pull them out of the event to keep their rankings high. They stop playing golf once their ranking gets to a certain level, and they stop playing in events. It's going to
Mhm.
impact that. So
Mhm.
we just want to make sure that the players here and the parents here, that you really want to just you want to play for the love of the game, and you want to play for getting better, because where you're going is you need to get better. You can't just rest on the laurels that, hey, your game is this, because we've seen it too often where players have stopped competing. They get to college, first week qualifying, and they have lost how to actually play and compete.
Exactly.
And so we want to make sure that those our audience really hears that it's still important that you guys see players who love to play the game, love to compete. And you
Yeah.
may not have your best game every week. You may not, go out and win every tournament, but stay with it.
Yep.
And, the other part of that is how you make a schedule around international events or national events, but yet you're not ready for it, and we hear that a lot, right? They're spending so much resources on traveling to New Mexico or traveling to Florida or traveling internationally to play an event to get Wagger points, because we know now that Wagger is becoming a little bit more of a steady stream of, hey, that's where the rankings I'm going, because kids can play in more Wagger ranked events.
Yeah.
But they're doing that more often, but
Yeah.
yet not really getting and cracking the top 20 or 25, but yet the rankings go up. So therefore they must be doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's nothing more important than getting that experience of feeling what it feels like to actually win and get the job done. And so, if you're a player who's struggling to do that, then maybe you can balance your schedule out a little bit better. Play in a hard tournament, because that too is important, right? To figure out, okay, what are these players doing and what do I need to be doing? Am I doing what they're doing? What's different about my game than their game? So it is important to play in some challenging events, but balance it out with some events that you can go just knock it out of the park and get that confidence, right? Because if golf is already a hard sport. You don't win very much
Yeah.
at all levels,
Yeah.
right? So, give yourself some of that winning experience to elevate your confidence. Go play in a hard tournament, learn from it, understand what these kids are doing. My light is crazy. So sorry. And go from there. So, yeah.
Well, Coach,
Would you recommend players to assess their skills before maybe entering certain events? Or, I think to your point, I think, you want to see them playing, but at the same time, it may be more realistic to understand where you are as a player before you sign up for certain events. And yeah, I think, just like they would say in major leagues, get a cup of coffee in the majors, right? You want to see what the competition is like before you get there, but yet assessing your skills and developing the skills necessary to reach and accomplish, greater things.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend an assessment to players to, say, assess your game, mental game, your physical, golf skills, to say this is important to know where you are so you can actually make the test, if you will, the tournament appropriate for you?
I mean, I think so. I think having that self-awareness as a golfer, we're an individual sport, right? You're the one hitting the shots. You're the one playing your game. So I think having personal awareness is probably the most important thing for your game. Understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what you need to do as a player in order to get better. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different assessments that these kids could go through. I know, there's some programs out there that, they can go through some testing and they can say, okay, how do I measure up, to these players, to this top, to the top 10 players, to the top 100 players, where am I in relation to them and how do I get better, from there. So I do think it's important. I think you don't want to get carried away with it, right? It's kind of like, okay, go through an assessment, see where you are, spend the next 6 months working on your game, competing, seeing where you go, and then maybe, the next 6 months you go through another assessment. Where did I grow? How did I get better? And you go from there.
Well,
Awesome.
incredible advice, Coach. Thank you so much for coming on the Hub Junior Golf Podcast. We've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and certainly expect really big things from the Tulane ladies. Just your attitude is obviously infectious, and I think you're going to have a lot of success. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Ryan, Roger, Michael, thank you all so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. You guys are rock stars for doing this for junior golf, and I know the families and kids are very lucky to have you helping them through this journey. So I appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Coach. Have a
thanks so
good day.
much.
All
Have a
right.
good
Bye-bye.
day. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, Roger. I actually wrote down a couple things because I know a lot of things to unpack here. But first and foremost, we had a bit of a run of portal happy coaches that saw the value of the portal over the junior golfer because been there, done that. Experienced college, lived on their own, traveled, etc., handled the academics. I love the idea of bringing someone from the portal because there's less question marks. We've gotten that a lot. With Coach Kaelin, I wrote down culture, relationships, 4 years in the same family. So it is a bit refreshing to hear that she is old school and wants to build from the ground from junior golf because the portal can be crazy. It is a bit of a free agency of who's to say you bring them in, they play well, they don't try for the bigger, better the next year. It is a bit of a less of a relationship and more of like a bringing in a talent and seeing what happens.
It's a transaction, right? I mean, so many people look at this now as a transaction, and it's refreshing to hear family, right? Yeah. Hey, I want, and truly seem to be, mean that, right? I mean, yeah. We can hear that occasionally, and oh yeah, we have a family here. The reality is that it is a transaction for a lot of, most likely top Power 5 schools, right? So, I mean, they're looking to. Coaches are looking to save their jobs. They're looking to win national championships. They're looking to promote the program as much as they possibly, or the university as much as they possibly can. It is a business now, much more so than it was 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago, I think you'd hear a lot more, programs, coaches talking more family oriented. We want to see them here 4 or 5, 4 years. With COVID, 5 years, maybe 6.
Right. Seriously.
So it is refreshing to hear that, and hopefully the families, caught that or will catch that, because that's what you're looking for too. Hopefully that's what you're looking for, not the, hey, I'm just going to go here for a couple of years and I'm going to jump ship too because I want the next best opportunity.
Yeah, when we should get Coach Kaelin to make the short drive to Coshada, do a PDI assessment. It's all right there, and her words. I mean, she obviously is interested in every 6 months putting her players through an assessment to see, okay, my short game is not up to where other players are, or my iron game is great, my putting is great, but boy, my short game is really standing out as a weakness of mine, or maybe it's dog leg lefts where I can't move the ball right to left. That has become a real problem. So look forward to staying in touch with Coach Kaelin and getting a PDI.
Well, think about that, Ryan. I mean, you've just had the Stanford girls win. You had
Texas,
part of that team that's gone through PDI, and they recognize some of the things they need to work on. So I've seen a couple of girls that have excelled there who've gone through that and said, hey, I need to work on these things, and clearly it made an impact. So, to her point of comparing yourself with what other players are doing to hopefully reach their heights, I mean, we've got the best programs in the country winning national championships who've done a PDI. So they'll definitely get to see what the best are doing.
Yeah. And we encourage you to reach out to Roger and myself. It is, I'm just blown away with the reaction on social media that I get from a mom or a dad that watched a podcast, and a lot of them, Roger, are just saying, keep it up. We love it. I listen every week. So it's nice to hear. She said it's nice to be recruited, but it certainly is nice to see all the reaction that the Hub of Junior Golf podcast is getting nationally and hopefully soon to be internationally. And we want to thank Coach Kaelin, head coach of Tulane, for coming on the show today, as I think there was a real breath of fresh air in the women's game. I would not be one bit surprised if if we're looking at a Final Four coach in the not near future.
No doubt about it. I mean, the players, you see her roster, you know, they're studs. And her attitude and her knowing that what she went through to become a player at Florida State and do what she's done as a player herself, but also now as a coach. And, you know, the word on the street is she is the next bright future coach that's going to win some major championships. So that's great.
Yep, no doubt about it. So that is going to do it for another edition of the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. For Roger Nick, for our director and producer, Michael Nick, I am Ryan Burr saying until next time. We'll see you real soon on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast.